about Asarah Beteves, which is coming up this week, Tuesday. That by then it's already going to be a day that's transformed into Yom Tov, into Sasun and Simcha. But the reason for it, why is it going to be a Yom Tov, a Sasun and Simcha, we need to understand. So it all begins with really that Asarah Beteves initially was actually a very positive time and a very good thing because of Hashem was Magdim Refuah Lamaka. Let's begin from line 1. Tainis Asarah Beteves, the fast of the 10th of Teves is Mishum Sheboy. In that day, B'yom Zeh, and this day, Samach Melach Bavel, that's the expression used in Yecheskel, that the king of Bavel surrounded, laid siege, al Yerushalayim, ve'evia b'matzah matzah, he brought it into a state of siege and difficulty. Ubekach hischila hagolos b'chlal. This was the first. This is the first part of the Geulah, like the Rebbe is soon going to explain. All the other fast days are commemorating events that took place after the siege of Yerushalayim. The first step of the Geulah began with the siege of Yerushalayim. The events that happened later, for example, on the 17th of Tammuz, they broke into the city 3 years later. B'Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, was Churban Beis HaMikdash, was the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, 3 weeks after Shavuos B'Tammuz. Ubegimel B'Tishrei, on the 3rd day of Tishrei, Oy B'Rosh Hashanah, or on Rosh Hashanah itself, Harigas Gedalia, was the assassination of Gedalia ben Achikom. That was, and there's difference of opinion. When did it occur? Did it occur on the 3rd day of Tishrei, when we actually have Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia, or did it occur on Rosh Hashanah, the assassination of Gedalia ben Achikom, who was the last governor that allowed some type of form of independence for Yehuda at that time? And the reason why the fast day is on the day after Rosh Hashanah, because you can't establish a fast day on Rosh Hashanah. So all of these events that we fast for, hivu hemshech l'matzah Yerushalayim, they are all a continuation of what began with the siege of Yerushalayim. V'yesh loimer, the Rebbe says in line 7, we could say, k'fi shehuz b'kvar pam b'archava, like was already explained at one time in breadth, in more greater detail. This, because Asarah Beteves is the beginning of all the problems that led to the exile. Because of this, this explains why that V'dram holds Shatainis Asarah Beteves Chamura Yoser Mishloishes Hatzoymes Hacherim. It's more severe, more stringent than all the other 3 fasts that we just now enumerated of Shavuos B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia. And the Avedram says, quote, Shafil lo hayachal b'Shabbos. In the days before we had a set calendar, it could have happened that Asarah Beteves to come out on Shabbos. Now with our calendar the way it's set, it will never come out on Shabbos. But Avedram said, even if it would have come out on Shabbos, we would not be able to push it off for another day. Even Tisha B'Av, when it comes out on Shabbos, we push it off for the following Sunday. But Asarah Beteves is in this regard even more stringent than Tisha B'Av. David Ram says, in that pasuk in Yecheskel, where it speaks about the day that Nebuchadnezzar besieged Yerushalayim, it says over there the words Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. It actually says it twice in that pasuk. In this very day, K'may b'Yom Kippurim. The words Etzem Hayom Hazeh is also an expression used concerning the fast of Yom Kippur, and we know that Yom Kippur, when it comes on a Shabbos, we fast, even though it's Shabbos. So David Rama says, just like on Yom Kippur that comes out on Shabbos, we fast despite the fact that it's Shabbos. The same thing. If it would have happened that Asarah Beteves, the 10th of Teves, would have come out on Shabbos, we would have fasted even though that's on Shabbos. Because this day, the day of Asarah Beteves, is the cause, the source of all the other things that cause Shalshol Shatzoimus of the other three fasts of Shavasar Batamas, Tisha B'Av, and Sem Gedalia. Because he is the initiator in the beginning of them, who Chamor Yoiser Mehem, it's much more severe than them. Now, not everybody agrees with the Avodram that Rebbe points out in the footnote, but despite that, there is something that applies nowadays, regardless, that we see the severity of the fast of Asarah Beteves. All other fasts, again, we're not talking about Yom Kippur. We're talking about fasts that have to do with the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash. We make sure they shouldn't come out on Friday, because then you have issues with fasting into Shabbos. But Asarah Beteves, when it actually comes out on a Friday, we do fast, even if someone was Makabel Shabbos early, they fast even into Shabbos. So we see this principle of the Avodram, that Asarah Beteves is so powerful that it vetoes and overrules Shabbos. Why is that? Because it's the source for all the other fasts. Now the Rebbe takes it a step further. Asarah Beteves only commemorated the siege of Yerushalayim in the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe goes on and says, in line 14, since the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, and the Geulah that followed in the wake of the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, it's a continuation of the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. This is even more so. Specifically, we see how it's a continuation, because it's not like the second Beis HaMikdash was a reboot. That when the second Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt, everything went back to the way it was in the first Beis HaMikdash. Not at all. That Shafilo Hagula Betkufas Ba'asheni Lahoisa Geulah Shleimah. Even the redemption during the period of the second Beis HaMikdash was not an entire redemption, for many various reasons. First of all, there was no self-governance. They were still under the king of Persia that allowed them to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. They weren't independent. They didn't have their own king. And not only that, but the majority of the Yidden remained in Persia and Bavel, wherever they were. It's only a minority of the Yidden returned to Eretz Yisrael. And especially so, the Rebbe emphasizes, because the spiritual power of the second Beis HaMikdash did not reach the level of the spiritual power of the first Beis HaMikdash. In the second Beis HaMikdash, 5 things that were prominent and in the first Beis HaMikdash were missing: the Aron, the Kapoiris on the Aron, the tabernacle, the ark, and the cherubs on top of the ark, and the fire that came down from heaven, etc. That the Gemara enumerates the 5 things. Also, Chassidus explains the number Hey. 5 indicates that the Hey Ilah, the upper level of the Hey of Hashem's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, did not shine. So that means, really, even during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, they were still under the influence of the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. We didn't truly undo the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash with the building of the second Beis HaMikdash. So what does it come out from all of this? Asarah Beteves was Chala v'Agoyim shall call inyan Agolas. Asarah Beteves is the beginning and the cause of the entire idea of exile, including what would take place after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. So he says, by the way, in footnote 9, the Rebbe mentions that even though we know that sometimes Geulah Mitzrayim is considered the initial Geulah, but in many ways Mitzrayim is not counted in the number of Geulah, because Mitzrayim was before Matan Torah, before the Jewish people actually officially became a nation, and therefore the first Geulah is the Geulah that began with Asarah Beteves, Geulah Bavel, that led us down the whole road of the Geulah to the second Beis HaMikdash, etc., etc. Ois Beis, top of the second column, line 20. The Torah establishes a rule, a principle, that Hashem precedes the medicine and the healing to the wound, to the injury. What does this mean? He empowers the person that a person should reach to the most highest level of healing. In other words, like the Rebbe Sungen explained, there is healing that is preventative medicine versus healing that comes after the fact. The greatest form of healing, the highest form of healing, is such a type of healing that Hashem says, I will not place it upon you. Not just like normal healing, that normal healing comes after there's an injury, after there's an illness, so the person is healed from it from now on, but yesterday he was sick, yesterday he was hurt. There's certain types of levels of healing that influence and like change and fixes like the past in a spiritual sense at least. But there's a level that's even higher than just influencing the past and undoing the past, but it's entirely preventative, that Hashem will never even put the illness upon the person initially. So therefore, going to our situation that we're talking about now, line 26, move on from this understood, also concerning the wound and injury and illness of exile, Hashem preceded the healing to the injury. Even before the exile began. And what did we say before the exile began? That the beginning was, like we said before, when the king of Bavel besieged Yerushalayim. Hashem already showed what is going to be the healing, specifically in a manner that I will not place upon you any type of illness. What does that mean? That already at the beginning he did that. So he says, Chazal lo'imrim, the Chazal say, Achomim say, the cause for the power and the length of this final exile, in other words, the exile after the second Beis Hamikdash, is ad kedei kach, and it's to such a degree that's a long exile, shaloi nizgal sakitzon. The end of the exile was not revealed, which is actually very appropriate also for this week's parsha, that right away at the beginning, it actually explains over there that Yaakov Avinu wanted to tell him the end of exile, and it was withheld from him. When it came to Geulah Bavel, they were told that they would be in exile for 70 years. When it came to the second Geulah, they were never told when the exile would finish. And the reason why the Geulah is so terrible and so long without a knowledge of its end, is sinas chinam, is needless hate. Well, Lefiza moving according to this understood, Sha'arefua, the healing. What is the healing for exile? Hageulah, the redemption min hagolos from Golos. Ha'hepach is the opposite. Avas chinam. We have to have needless love, to love for no reason. Avas Yisrael, loving another Jew. Achdas Yisrael b'shlem Musa, a perfect state of unity amongst Jews. Line 36. So now the Rebbe is going to say, didn't we just point out that was the second Geulah, the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, that was not revealed their end, and you're connecting it with the, as the Rebbe is soon going to tie this in, with the Magdim Refuah Lamaka, that Hashem preceded already the healing by doing it by the first Beis Hamikdash. If the first Beis Hamikdash was not anything about the needless hate, So the Rebbe says in the last paragraph on this page, even concerning the destruction of the first base of Mikdash, that the destruction of the first base of Mikdash was not for this reason of needless hate, but rather but rather the first base of Mikdash was destroyed because of the three cardinal sins: avodah zarah, idolatry; Geulah arayos, immoral relationships; v'shvichas damim, and murder. So if so, how do you connect it to Avas Yisrael would have preceded and prevented what Asarah Beteves began? So the Rebbe says a very important point. How do you do him? The Chazal, it's known what the Chazal say. Shafilu kasher Yisrael oivdim avodah zarah rachman litzlan. Even if Yidden, heaven forbid, serve avodah zarah, hareim heim meuchadim, if they are joined, if they are united, ein efsharus lishlik b'hem. It's impossible to be able to rule over them and to be able for anyone to destroy the Jewish people. The only way how we are susceptible to punishment is when we're lacking unity. So even in the first base of Mikdash, it would have helped, or it would have prevented the whole destruction if we would have had Avos Yisrael, despite all those other things that we might have been doing wrong. So he says in line 3, according to this, we have to say, even before it began the wound and injury and illness of exile, in the very siege itself, Samach Melech Bavel, that the king of Bavel besieged the Yerushalayim. Hashem gave us the capability for peace and unity, which is the Higdim Refuah Lamaka. This is the idea of preceding the medicine before the cure, before the illness. Line 7, the Rebbe explains, the explanation for this is, in a literal sense, what does a siege do? No one can go out of a place that's besieged, and no one can come in. No one can leave the besieged city, and everybody is forced to remain in the same city. And on the other hand, someone that doesn't belong in the city, someone that's not an inhabitant of the city, and he's also not able to enter. There's only Jews over there. Me'ir Yerushalayim, from the city of Yerushalayim, there's no exit and no coming in. It's a city that we say in Tehillim that it's joined to it together, meaning it's mechaberes u'machedes as kol Yisrael. The city of Yerushalayim is a city that joins and unites all the Yidden. So Yidden are like trapped in a place where they're in a state of unity. This is the total opposite of what would cause disunity. It's almost like we're soon going to explain at the end in a similar vein. You can have a teacher or a parent, or say the two kids, you're not coming out of the room until you make peace between each other. That's what Melech Bavel was doing. Yosef Makach, the Rebbe says in line 15, even more so, Mehusa Yerushalayim, the very nature of Yerushalayim is Kenirmas Bishmal, like it's hinted in its name, Yarei Shalim, Shleimus Hayira, the perfect and complete awe of Hashem, the Bittul to Hashem. That's the word Yerushalayim, can be divided into two. Kenamar B'divrei Rishonim, like it said in the words of the Rishonim, Yerushalayim hishpia yiras shemayim l'chol elu shoyeboyim elav v'roim savodah migdash v'cholu. Yerushalayim influenced and brought about fear of heaven to all those that used to come visit Yerushalayim and saw the service in the base of Migdash. And this influence remained with them even after they returned home. The siege of Yerushalayim caused Not only are Jews joined and united, even more so, the unity and oneness is specifically in a place that's the perfect awe of Hashem. Achdus amvosesses al Torah mitzvah kedusha, a unity that's founded and based on Torah, mitzvahs, and holiness. And the Rebbe in the footnote brings down from the Mittler Rebbe, says that true unity is only applicable in the realm of holiness. In Klippa, there can never be true unity because everything is about the ego, and the ego is all about me and doesn't want to share and interact with anyone else, only to the degree how much it supports my own ego. So therefore, when you have an achdus in a place of Yerushalayim, so you have the ultimate unity, because it's a unity, it's associated with kedusha and holiness. Last paragraph in the first column. Hascholos hagolusi, the beginning of exile, he ba'ofen shamaka atzma haisa tzricha ligram l'refuah. The very wound, the very injury, was supposed to cause the healing. Not only did the very injury of being in a siege would it be able to cause the unity, but it even preceded it. The Rebbe says very simply, that the unity that the siege causes begins and it's revealed immediately at the beginning of the siege. Before one feels the negative effects and the tsaros and problems that's a result of the injury part of the siege, a shortage and whatever they need, etc. And surely the unity that's forced upon them is felt and is revealed before the enemy's goal is reached, which is obviously to minamotzer, his purpose in the siege is kibush ha'ir, the conquest of the city. So you have the unity even before, way before the goal of the siege, which is to conquer the city. Lefiza moving according to this understood. The expression that's found concerning the siege in Nevuos, in the Cheskel Hanovi, when it speaks over there about the Nevuah of Hashem, about the siege, so Eina Rogel Klal, it uses a term that's completely unusual. Samach Melech Bavel. Samach means support. Meloshin Smicha ve'ezra. It's in the word support and help. Like we have this Soibech Hashem l'chol neiflim, we do say in davening every day. And there's so many times throughout the Torah where the word Soimech, it means a help and a support. So that's why the Torah uses that over here, to show that really this siege was really to support and help Yidden prevent what would happen. Even more so, this was not a state that the Jewish people chose to be united. Nebuchadnezzar forced them to be in such a state that caused by the rules of nature for the Jewish people to be joined in Yerushalayim together with the Beis HaMikdash. And this state, being in a state of unity with the Beis HaMikdash, well, that itself will nullify the siege. In such a way that will be preventative. I didn't even place it upon you. Like I gave the example about, the adult that tells the two kids to stay in the room together until they make peace. So why didn't it work? Because Hashem gives us free choice. A Jew has freedom of choice. The state of the siege did not cause true unity. That's why Nebuchadnezzar was eventually successful to overpower them. Ois Dalud, line 40. Matarosam shall arbos hatzoimus, the goal of these 4 fast days, of Asarah Beteves, Shivos Betamus, Tishbav, and Soim Gedalia, he la'oirer halevavis liftoyak darkei hatshuva, like the Rambam says, to inspire the hearts to open up the ways of tshuva. Shaidei zikaron hadvarim shagar mulois natzaris, by remembering those things that brought us and caused those problems and those difficulties, etc., that we experienced. Noshuv lahetiv, this remembering and recalling it will make us return to do good. Move on. So therefore, it's understood. Asarah Beteves maskir liyehudi b'rosh b'rishoyin, that Asarah Beteves reminds a Jew first and foremost shaderech levatlas ois natzaris, that the way to nullify those problems, those tzaras, he b'emtzois avas Yisrael v'achtus Yisrael. It's via loving another Jew and having the unity of Jews. Shekol haYehudim yisachdu b'ofen shechubra lo yachtov, that all Jews should become united in the way that they're joined to it together. Ba'achdus hakshura l'shleimus hayira l'beis hamikdash, in a oneness and unity that's connected to the ultimate awe of Hashem and to the Beis HaMikdash, hapnimi, the inner Beis HaMikdash, v'chanti b'soicham, that I will dwell amongst them. In other words, you're going to say, true, then they were all together in the city that had the Beis HaMikdash, but now what does it mean that we have the true unity of the place of the Beis HaMikdash? There's no Beis HaMikdash. So he says, each one of us has the inner Beis HaMikdash. So we have a unity that should be based on the Beis HaMikdash, meaning Achdus Amvusesas al Torah mitzvahs, a unity, a oneness that's based on Torah mitzvahs. Then the fast days will be nullified. They'll be transformed to be a Yom Tov, a holiday, and days of joy, rejoicing and happiness. Since the descent of the 10th of Teves is even more than all the other fasts, like we said right away at the beginning of the Sicha, that it's the cause of all the other fasts, and therefore, if it would come on a Shabbos, David Ram said, it would force us to fast on Shabbos, etc., etc. So it's a much greater descent. So therefore, Tia Gama Aliyah Geulah Yoser, so the ascent that results from that unity of this siege will be so much greater. They will reach a level of this, the very essence of this day. It should be similar to Yom Kippurim, Lamal Yusa, in the good way. David Ram brought down that just like by Yom Kippur it says Etzma Yom Hazeh, so too when it says by Asarah Beteves Etzma Yom Hazeh, so we're going to have to fast even when it comes out on Shabbos. Here the Rebbe says, but when we turn over the fast of Asarah Beteves to a positive day, so then it becomes a positive day, just like Yom Kippur is a positive day. Shabbos Shabbosin, it's a Shabbos of Shabboses. Hanaylam Shabbos, that's even higher than Shabbos, and they both share another common thing. The Asarah Beteves and the day of Yom Kippur are both the 10th day of the month, which the Rebbe always likes to quote, Hasiri Yir Kodesh, the 10th will be holy, so we will reach this ultimate holiness, which will happen immediately with the coming of Moshiach.